Welcome to the Cyber Business Podcast, where we feature top founders and entrepreneurs and share their inspiring stories. Now, let's get started with the show.
Matthew Connor here, host of the Cyber Business Podcast. Today, we're joined by Jason Frame, CIO at Southern Nevada Health District. Jason, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Matthew. How are you doing?
Fantastic. Thanks for joining us. And before we get too far in, a quick word from our sponsors. This episode's brought to you by cyberlinks.com. That's cyberlynx.com. Do you know if a hacker's in your system? Most people and most companies don't until it's too late and the hacker's already done damage. A hacker's job is to bypass your security, so companies need a way of knowing when someone's gotten past their security. That's where Cyberlinks comes in. We've partnered with the best cybersecurity companies in the world to be able to provide our clients with the best solutions at the best prices. So whether it's managed SIEM, SOC, EDR, MDR, XDR, you name it, we'll help you find the best solution at the best price. Find out more at cyberlinks.com. That's cyberlynx.com. And now back to our show. Jason, for those who aren't familiar, can you tell us about Southern Nevada Health District and your role there as CIO?
Yeah, Matthew. Southern Nevada Health District, we're the local public health agency down in the Las Vegas area. And we're also a federally qualified healthcare center. So we do primary care as well as our public duties. When you think about public health, we do all the restaurant inspections. So for all the people, and there's a lot of tech conferences that come to town, we're the ones that make sure those restaurants are practicing food sanitary and safety measures so that when they go to eat there, people go to eat there, they know that they can be safe and they're not going to get sick. We also do other stuff like we regulate all the EMTs and the ambulances in the valley to make sure that they're ready to go. If someone has to go in an ambulance, it's all prepared. Everything's ready to go with them. We do a number of other things, but one of the other big things that we do is public health. If we all remember a few years ago, this little thing called COVID, that was us. We were the main agency when it came down to COVID. We did everything from contact tracing, testing, immunizations. We have a public health lab that actually ran the COVID tests and did all the PCR labs. So a very wide array of things that we do.
That's great. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and my role as CIO, I'm in charge of all the technology. We're a small agency and we have our IT staff all here, but I'm in charge of infrastructure, help desk, support, application development, and project management, and all those things.
Nice. And when you said COVID, that was us. That was great. I got a good chuckle out of that. I thought, yeah, well, it was either you or China. It had to come from somewhere.
I do sometimes say, well, we did everything except for release it from the lab, but yeah, we were the group in charge of, doing all that. And it was a fun time, being what we do, but it was a crazy time. A lot of long hours but we did a lot of great innovations. The team did, they stepped up really well.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I'm a big fan of those kind of emergency missions, right? I mean, it gets people going, and I think that's where you kind of find out who's really on your team and wants to roll up their sleeves and work, and who's just there for a paycheck and doesn't really care. So right. I've always really enjoyed that, and I think COVID was was great for that. I think it was tough in a lot of ways, but at the same time, when the going gets tough, right? So.
I think it was great for a lot of the IT shops around the country because they showed the value of IT. For so many years we've tried to talk about it, why the IT leaders and the CIOs need a seat at that table, and I think COVID really was a chance for them to step up and earn that seat.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. I think it really kind of showcased the power and abilities of a lot of the IT providers. And I think that people were finally at that place where they were really ready, willing, and able to accept the idea of remote support and working remotely. And so it was just kind of the confluence of a lot of things all at the same time where we finally, I think as a community, we were pushing for that for a long time, but it was falling on deaf ears, and COVID really kind of helped, I think, in that regard. And then at the same time, on the security side, ransomware was kind of flourished, but I think it was a good thing for the industry as a whole because it got everybody's buy-in. It became kind of everyday news to everybody that ransomware cybersecurity is important versus I think it was a struggle before that.
it really brought it out into the light, especially for the non-technical leaders in the organizations. They saw, oh, cybersecurity really matters.
Yeah.
And when we're sending people at home, and for us being in healthcare, it wasn't just cybersecurity, it was privacy we had to, concern ourselves with. So when we were helping our staff move to work from home, we had to make sure they had a location where they would be able to view patient data that their kids wouldn't be seeing it when they walk by, or, a spouse or a family member. So we had to think about it at even an extra layer of protection.
So how did that work for you guys? I mean, that's I mean, I get that it's an extra layer, it's more to consider, but how do you implement that when somebody's working from home? Not everybody's got a nice private home office. So
Yep.
how do you address things like that?
We worked with them on how they could secure it. For those ones who didn't have the office, then we were able to get them screen protectors,
Yeah.
or so the privacy screens, those type
Yeah.
of things. We can make sure that they had the dual ear headsets, so when they're on a conversation, it wasn't just one ear and it wasn't coming out. We found a lot of different measures, and depending on the person's situation.
Yeah. So, I mean, you guys do so much there with when it, with the public health. I mean, I think is that really kind of typical of kind of it seems like you're doing a lot more than I would, you would generally think. You think, oh, health inspectors, one thing, but then clinics and whatnot, it seems like you guys have got a really large umbrella of services.
We do, and then a lot of the public health, they don't do the actual clinical care. They might do immunizations. We do that too. We branched out into the FQHC space. We opened up in actually 2019, right before COVID hit. I think October the year before. So as we were growing it, then this happened. So it really kind of helped us build the practice out. But it's something that we saw in our area, in the Las Vegas area. There's so many people that just are not serviced by providers.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to step in and fill that void. We saw the need for it. You're starting to see more of the larger public health agencies around the country starting to do this,
Yeah.
but it's a little bit out of the norm.
Yeah. Nice. So let me ask you, I think we've had so many different CIOs on our show, and I don't think any two have had the same path to the top. And so if you would, I like to call it an origin story. Can you share your origin story with us and how you got into IT? What, was it one of these love at first sight from an early age? Did you
Yep.
happen upon it? And how did you go from there to here? Because I think these stories help people looking to get into IT to see that you can come from just about anywhere.
Yeah, definitely. I started out, playing games as a kid on the computer. I think I got my first computer when I was like 6 years old. Back in I don't want to date myself, but it was, the pre-Apple IIe and way back in the day with the green screen. So I started doing that, and using BASIC to start coding. And we go out and you buy a magazine and there'd be a game in there and it'd just be all the text would be in there. You'd have to type it in and code it and make it run. But that's how I started off in my coding experience. And I really liked developing software and writing code. I took a couple classes like that in high school, and then I said, you know what, I'm gonna try computer engineering going to school. I got into that a little bit and realized I didn't like the engineering part as much, the EE stuff. So I moved into computer science, which is what I really liked, especially when you got into the higher level stuff with the algorithms and the problem solving, which is something I've always loved to do. I've always liked doing puzzles and those type of things, so it kind of fit naturally. I got my first IT job was actually putting scanner systems into grocery stores up
Right.
in Northern California. Did that as a summer job. Got a good experience working with IT and understanding the people that are in there and kind of how business worked. And then during college, I got my first job as an intern doing coding for the Department of Energy contractor that ran the Nevada test site where they tested the nuclear weapons.
Cool.
So that was my first job. I worked there for a number of months, and then that job ended and went to another one where I was doing coding, and it was for a Department of Defense contractor. And I think in my first 3 weeks there, I wrote more code than I did in my whole time in college. Stayed there for a long time, and then ended up here at Southern Nevada Health District in 2009 as a programmer analyst, a business analyst programmer, and started going off that. They saw that I could develop software really well. I was good at coding. They created the software engineer role. I moved into that. We started a software engineering team. I took over as supervisor of that, and that was my first supervisory experience. That was documented, and then built that up, that team up. We were writing a lot of stuff. Um, the IT manager at the time wanted, he was leaving, he was moving out of state. So I took that as an interim role. I stepped up to my boss and said, you know what, I'd like to try this out. And his response was, well, you don't have the experience. I'm like, well, of course, how do I get it?
Yeah.
And so I said, give it to me as interim. You got to take some time to find someone anyway. It'll give me some experience. Did that for about 6 months and then got the full-time role. And then that got upgraded to CIO back in 2019.
Nice. I think that's a really nice story there. A really nice trick. The whole that interim spot. That was great because I think a lot of people would have heard that and been like, "Oh, okay, and been kind of disappointed that and stuck in one of those catch 22s. You can't have the job because you don't have experience. You can't get experience because you don't, okay,
Exactly.
got it. And
So I
so
just I just pushed back and said, well, give me that experience then. Let me do as
yeah.
an interim while you're looking for someone else.
Yep. No, that's beautiful. And how long did it take before they were like, okay, we're not going to look? How did that just kind of walk somebody through it? Because I think for a kid listening to this who is coming up and I say kid, but as somebody coming up and they're thinking they run into that, and I think a lot of people run into that.
I do too.
I think that's an excellent strategy that I don't think I've heard before. I know we haven't had it on the show yet, and I think it's a brilliant idea. So could you just kind of walk us through what happened with you and how that actually played out kind of?
Yes, I did the interim, and unfortunately, one of the first things I had to do was navigate through layoffs that we were going through, but with the
Oh,
economic downturn that came through in the 2008
right.
2009 timeframe, and so that hit us a little bit later. So we were walking through that, and one of the reasons why the manager that left, he didn't want to do that to his team. So I stepped in, and we're being government, we're kind of a union shop, so they just said, well, let's just go, the newest people in, last in, first out.
Yeah.
And I said, well, that'll devastate a lot of the things that we're doing. So I said, let's be strategic about it and went from there. So guided us through that. And then, the budget was the next thing. So I had to learn that really quick and, guided it through that. And then they didn't just give me the job, though. I had to compete with everyone else. One of the things we don't just promote people. We always have open competition, being the nature of our company. So I had to compete with other people coming in and interview. And as funny, I was talking to one of the guys on the interview panel. I've become really good friends with them. I said it's so much harder to interview as an internal candidate rather than an external one because when I'm not telling the truth or if I'm embellishing or something. They know me, and so it made it a little bit harder because I couldn't just go in there and tell stories. I had to back it up with proof.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you, did your kind of reputation there at the organization, did that help you because, or was that something that you had to overcome? Like, I think a lot of times I'll go back to the old army days. You've got some kid who comes in as a private and you met him as a private. Now you always think of them as a private. And
Yep.
even though they're kind of moving up the ranks, you're still seeing them as private, Johnson, instead of now specialist or sergeant or whatever, they've moved up, they've done their time. Um, was that something kind of psychologically that was a part of that, or did you find not at all?
Not for me, and the reason why the leadership from when I had started had all completely changed, and
Nice,
so they came in while I was already a supervisor, so they only saw me in that role before that. So I
nice.
didn't have to deal with that, and that can be tough getting reframing yourself.
Yeah.
But I did go through a similar thing about a year and a half ago where my boss's position opened up. They opened up a new position, one step above me as deputy district health officer. And I said, I got the minimums. I'm going to apply for it. And so I did. I got an interview, didn't get the job, but I got great feedback. And the one guy that I was telling you about that I talked to after my first interview as the manager, he's now our health officer. And so he's the head of our agency. But he wasn't in that role at that time, but he was part of the interview panel again. And after we got done, he said, "You know what? You just reframed yourself. You're not just the IT guy anymore to that group." And that was all the senior leaders. Because I was able to go in there and, I do have an MBA, so I'm able to speak the language of business. I was able to talk to what I know about finance, what I know about HR, what I know about facilities. So I took all that experience and I was able to show that I'm not just the tech guy anymore.
That's right.
And part of
Nice.
that has been something I've been working on over the last few years, not speaking tech to those type of people,
Yeah.
speaking the language of the business. So for me, it's speaking government services, public administration, and now healthcare. So
Yeah.
understanding that, and I don't go and talk about servers or switches or anything like that unless it's budget time. I say I need to refresh switches. They don't know any of the models. They don't care. So I try to speak what they know.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really big one. I mean, speaking the language of the people you're talking to is
Yep.
it's the only way. But let me ask you, so on your with your MBA, at what point along your journey there did you decide, you know what, I think an MBA is going to be helpful? Or was it just something you wanted because you were curious, thought it'd be a good thing? How'd that work for you?
A little bit of both. So I graduated with my bachelor's, and then it was a couple years after that. Some of my old professors were like, "Why don't you get a degree in CS? You know, get your master's in computer science." We hired a guy with a master's in computer science at my role, and I think he got like $1,500 more than what I got with a bachelor's. So I'm like, well, there's no monetary incentive to spend a couple more years and frustration and all that. So I didn't want to do that. And then I saw this thing. This is back in the late '90s where it showed that if you had a computer science degree and an MBA, you could get these type of jobs up in Silicon Valley or whatever. And the numbers sounded really good. So I'm like, all right, cool. And I remember as an old poster I saw when I was in the '80s when I was a kid. It said MBA equals BMW as a BMW ad. And I'm like, I remember that as in the back of my mind. I'm like, I'm gonna go get an MBA. And it was something I found out I really enjoyed it. I mean, I did the MIS as the concentration, but also entrepreneurship. And I've always had that kind of a mindset of, being more of an entrepreneur. I don't want to start my own company, but I've worked for startups before. And like when I came here, when I ran the software engineering team, I ran it like a startup with what I allowed our team to do. So that just said, I'm going to go do that. And I'm like, well, I'll just go to UNLV because I'm already here. I'm already working full time. I don't want to leave that. And so I looked and said, what do I need to get an MBA? Went online, found it. Oh, you need to take the GMAT. All right, cool. Where do I take the GMAT? And I found it. I'm like, and it was like a Thursday and I signed up for the next Tuesday. So didn't do any prep or anything, just went in and took it and, scored well enough to get into school and then went through the MBA.
That's awesome. I mean, I think that that computer science and MBA, combo is just it's so powerful. I think even today, I think it's a great one to have. Because as you said, being able to not just speak the language of the senior leaders, but to really understand the business. It's one thing to come up in it and understand the business. It's another, as you go to reframe yourself, they may see you as that, just the IT guy, but now
Yep.
suddenly it's like, oh, I didn't know Jason had an MBA. And Jason's not talking, zeros and ones at us. He's actually talking about, the financial statements, and he's talking about the actual business needs. Okay. So that's
Yeah, it
fantastic.
takes a little effort to reframe yourself, but I think it's something that we all can do.
Yeah. I love it. So, what would be some, as long as we're exploring that, because I think that for a lot of kids now, I think a lot of people are grappling with is, especially in tech, is going to college even worth it? And I think that's an interesting question. But then when you start thinking about is an MBA worth it? I mean, clearly, the difference between somebody who is a self-taught programmer who may be fantastic, their career trajectory, and somebody who has gotten their degree in computer science and an MBA is going to be entirely different. Um, Not to say that you couldn't have a very similar one, um, but I'm curious what your take is on it, since you've clearly gone down that path.
Yeah. I agree and I also disagree a little bit because I think if you look at Silicon Valley, you look at the startups, a lot of the guys, they come out just with tech and they understand that. And these guys can code better than I ever could. And they do really well. So I think the career trajectory, it really depends on what you want to do. If you're comfortable working, you want to be a coder, you want to be, an engineer, you want to just be in the tech world, you might not need to go to college. A boot camp, boot camps will help, certifications help, those type of things. If you want to get into more corporate though, that's where the college they really require it. We're actually going through all the job descriptions and realize, trying to refactor what one really do need a degree and what don't.
Yeah.
Um, because right now, everything needs a degree, but I think we all understand that that's not the case. And so we're trying to, make it easier on people because we know the situation that a lot of people are in right now of being able to afford college, afford the loans, going to school and then not having jobs coming out because, right now there's a lot of uncertainty. I can understand why people are debating that college. When I grew up, it was, oh, you want to do something, you go to college.
Yeah.
But I think tech has in some ways changed that. And kind of in one way too, AI is changing some of that too. And so I think that's helping out. And there's so much great learning online for free now that you can go out and you can almost get an MBA for free by watching these classes from Berkeley and Stanford and Harvard and MIT. So I think there's a lot of, if you're self-motivated, there's a lot of stuff out there for you.
No, and that's absolutely, I completely agree. And I think that the person who teaches themselves how to code is clearly a self-motivated person, right? They're intellectually curious, then they explore that. And I think that they're the type of person who, when they're I think they're more drawn to the Silicon Valley startup idea of, look, fresh out of high school, they're a great coder. They go and they get a job, at some startup, and they end up, if the startup makes it, they've got a boatload of money, and they're doing great, and they can keep parlaying that into the next startup. And that's an entirely different world than the kid who goes for CS, who then wants a nice, corporate job, who's looking to be the CIO at a Fortune 500 company. I
Mhm.
think getting to that CIO at a Fortune 500 company is an entirely different career path than that kid who is going that startup. But the thing that I love about this industry is that there's space for really anybody who's just interested and willing to put in the work.
Yep.
Then it's out there. The opportunity's there. It's just a matter of, what do you enjoy, because you'll be great at that, and
Yep.
then go do it. I mean, because I think there is no lack of opportunity out there. And I know people are talking about, oh, there are people being late. Sure, at the big companies there are layoffs, right? Because they gobbled up a bunch of people, they paid them a lot, and now when they downsize, they let go of thousands of people. Okay, but I think that gives a false impression of the market, the job market for computer scientists and programmers and just tech in general. And I'm
Mhm.
kind of curious your perspective on it, because you're hiring people all the time. You're in the thick of it. Would you agree, or no? It's kind of that way right now.
I think it's getting that way right now. It's not all the way there. I think things are slowing a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be honest though, I'm kind of fortunate. We don't do a lot of hiring. We have a great team here that doesn't want to leave. And I think our newest hire is almost 2 years ago, which
Nice.
in the tech world is, kind of amazing. And
Yeah.
so we've built a good organization here, but I do see it and I have friends that are in it, and in the different markets. I have friends up in Silicon Valley and I hear it from them. And in some ways though, up there, that's kind of the norm. You're with a startup. Okay, it might hit for a year or two. It might not. You might get laid off and move on to the next one. But it's those corporate ones, and a lot of the hard part with the guys coming out of the corporate world, guys and girls coming out of the corporate world, is they're so narrowly focused up there that they have a harder time finding the jobs. They really need another corporate job. Whereas the all around, the good coders and stuff, they can find jobs anywhere.
Yeah.
So I think that's some of the difference. So depending on your trajectory and what you want to do, if you're coming, you're losing a job in a corporate world, right now it's going to be hard because other corporations might not be hiring as much.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you, you mentioned your retention rate being so great. Um, what has been the key to success there? I mean, I know there's a lot of great companies out there, who have done great, they really take care of their people in terms of quality of life, in terms of compensation.
Yeah.
What is it that you guys have come up with, or you've come up with, that has kind of allowed you to have such great retention?
I think just being a great leader. No, just kidding.
I love
Really,
it.
I work with my team. Being government, there's not a lot we can do. There's not a lot of perks that we can offer. We don't do bonuses. We can't buy food all the time. Um, Probably 3 or 4 times a year, I buy them lunch or take them out. I work out something where we can go to Dave and Buster's for an afternoon, and
Yeah.
but all that all comes out really out of my pocket or we team together as a leadership team and do that. So we try to take care of them that way, but it's also, very flexible with the scheduling with them. When we had a new hire, I had a new admin start. My old admin retired after 20 something years. I had a new administrative assistant start, and I'd known her for a long time. And one of the things I said, I go, I know you have daughters, they're in high school, junior high school. There's a lot of stuff goes on with that because I have a daughter that's, roughly the same age. I go, you don't have to ask if you need to do something for your family. I'm never going to say no. You don't have to ask me for that time off. Just let me know where you're going to be at. So if you need to go to a recital or an award ceremony, whatever, just say, you know what, I'm not going to be here. I'm going to be doing this with my family. Great. I'm not going to ever say no. I'm not going to penalize you or punish you for it. So I think that type of treatment of our people, they realize
Yeah.
that we recognize that they're adults, they're responsible. I'm not checking the clock when they come in. I'm just making sure that, they get the job done. And I know that when I ask them to do something, they'll drop what they're doing right now and get it for me.
Yeah. Well, I think that's really crucial. Do you guys do a lot of remote, or is it all in office?
We are a hybrid organization. So some of our team, the rules were you had to be in at least 1 day a week. That was our district-wide rule. And so there's some positions that they're in 1 day a week. Some like our help desk team, they're in more often because they're more visible. They're working and doing moves and stuff. What we even tried to do with them was to give them 1 day at home at least, so they're not here the whole time.
Right.
On the days they're at home, they're managing tickets, they're working remote, they're doing all the stuff they can do, but it at least gives them some flexibility.
Yeah.
Um, there's other agencies here in town that don't allow their people to work remotely at all. And we've actually gotten a person from one of those because it was a lateral move, not more money, but the quality of life issue was a big thing to them.
Yeah. Well, see, I think you nailed it. I think it's that you're focused on more of the KPIs and just getting the job done. And I think I've met so many people who grapple with or dislike the idea of remote because for them they're stuck in this mindset of wanting to count their beans and bullets, and seeing everybody there. And to me, that seems crazy, especially in tech where we've been helping people work remotely forever, for a long time. If we can't do it, and I have friends who run IT companies and they insist on people being in the office. I'm like, that doesn't even make any sense.
No,
You provide all your support remotely. You want your clients to embrace remote support, and yet you won't embrace your people being remote. What sense does that make, right? And so you get to pass that off to them, and people get to enjoy that because you're treating them like responsible adults who
yep,
will then step up to that. I think.
right.
Um,
And we do have some other guidelines in place. So, like if we need them here, they're supposed to be here within an hour. That's kind of the thing that they agree to. I've only had to use that once or twice in the last couple of years, so it's not something I abuse. And then I'm very flexible with it. If I can make something work. Their remote day is usually Wednesday, but they have something coming up on Thursday. Okay, let's switch your remote day. I'm very flexible with our team because to me, I don't care about watching a clock. I don't, if they can get their job done, I'm fine with it. And let's face it, being in tech, we all know that there's downtime and there's times when you're busier and there's times when you're slower. And sometimes when I'm walking through our offices, which I try to do every day, walk through to see who's here, talk to them and hang out. They might be watching a YouTube video or doing something. Doesn't bother me because I know that if I ask them, they'll do it.
Yeah. And that's great. I think that is the great leadership that you joked about. But
Right.
I think that's really that is good leadership, is having the strength to not get to be able to see people as responsible humans and
Yep.
then allow them to step up to the challenge and be that versus trying to micromanage and just kind of have people show up just to show up and having arbitrary rules. Like the world's got enough arbitrary rules. Why we don't need to make more of them at work, right? I
I,
mean,
I see a lot of those here with other groups, and I see that in one group in particular that they have a lot of those. And what I see with that is they have a lot of turnover.
yep,
And when you have five, six, seven open positions at any time, that's not a good sign. That's a sign of something wrong in your leadership over there.
yeah,
And so there's a lot that you can do with it. But like I said, treat people like adults. But I let them know though that if they abuse it, then we might have to have that decision. And one of the sayings I have with a lot of team is, as long as we don't end up in HR, I'm okay with what we're doing.
that's right. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. That can be applied to just about anything you do at work. As long as we don't end up in HR, I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
Right? That's fantastic. Well, you know what? I I think, we touched on AI a little earlier, as a kind of a resource to learning. And I think on the tech side, it's been, absolutely fantastic as a kind of a force multiplier already, even though it's, I think a lot of these tools are new and only been out for a year or so. They've been, I think, transformative in how you can accomplish things. I mean, can you imagine having AI back when we were programming every day? I mean, coding was it was a different world back before you had Google. Google
Yeah.
was nice because you could Google stuff and find answers. And
Yeah,
now
I
with
saw a T-shirt that I wanted to buy. It said, "I survived computer science before Google."
that's right.
You know,
That's a
and
badge of
and
honor
now
right
it's
there.
before ChatGPT. So,
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just a totally different game. So let me
yes,
ask you, where do you see that, or do you guys get to apply that and utilize that there, and as a bit of a force multiplier?
we do. I encourage my team that back in like early was 2022 when it started getting big. I said if you're not using AI and ChatGPT, you need to start. Just for and make sure we secure it and all that. I saw you giving those talks, but you hear that mantra out there that AI is going to take your job. And so what I explained to my team is that, you probably heard that and they all had. I go, well, that's not the case, but I think someone using AI might because
Right.
use it as a force multiplier, use it as a way to improve what you're doing, make you more productive, make you more efficient. And so I encourage it quite a bit. We have a green light for people to use it in our district for public stuff that has not, no PII, no PHI, nothing
Right.
sensitive in it.
Of course.
We give them that opportunity. We are actually putting in a couple different AI applications that work with our healthcare data.
Nice.
We're very careful about it, but we're using that and a lot of de-identified stuff. But then one of the things we haven't done yet is we haven't opened up Copilot for general use yet.
Right.
And the reason why is I think when I look at our data, I know that we're not secure enough. We're going through a classification process right now. We're finding things that people have put out in shared drives that shouldn't be out in shared drives. Stuff with health information out there that they shared with someone, but that they left it open to everyone.
Yeah.
So until we get that cleaned up, I've already told my leadership team we're not going to enable Copilot because I don't want someone to go in there and be able to ask a question and get these answers.
Yep.
So they're happy with that. We're going through a big process over the next 6 months to really make sure that's all cleaned up, and with the goal of probably within the next 9 to 12 months being able to open up Copilot for general availability.
Oh, that's great. And that's the responsible thing to do. And I think that far too often people they get excited about it,
Yep.
and while they say, yeah, we got to be careful about it, and I don't think they've taken the time to really look like you did and say, hey, look, we've got data all over the place. This is not secure yet. So good for you. That's
It's
great.
something that we've been looking at, and once we started running some scans, we saw some stuff that was health information, secure, sensitive data out in this file share that hasn't been accessed in 10 years. And so it's like, okay, we got to start cleaning this stuff up. So we have a major initiative to do that.
That's great. No, I think that's something that everybody should really focus on before implementing it. And I would I wouldn't be shocked to find out that a lot of people
Uh,
aren't nearly as careful.
No, we've seen that. You've seen the stories that have come out. You've seen the breaches that have happened with AI, and one of the arguments is, well, it's kind of expensive to get all that done. But the cost of retraining a model is so much more. Because
Yeah.
once that data is out there, if it's just retraining is one thing, like if it's internal. But if you leak something out, proprietary information, like what Samsung did, that could cost millions of dollars in lost revenue or, reputation expense or anything like that. So to me, it's a risk versus reward. And, it's really mitigating a lot of that risk.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And well, let me ask you, since we're on the topic, where do you see it playing out for you guys, as you move forward into the future? How are you any thoughts on AI and the future there for you guys?
Yeah, like I said, we have some initiatives. We put in a machine learning algorithm that helps us with as a no-show predictor for our clinics,
Oh, cool.
which helps us, make sure that our staffs, we're properly staffed and we're, bringing in enough patients and we're keeping the providers busy enough. We are working on a conversational AI product right now to answer a lot of the incoming calls. Like whenever we have, say, an incident happen, we had a Legionnaire's outbreak at a hotel. We open up a call line, people call in, and we've outsourced that to a third party usually, and that can become really expensive. So when we did that with COVID, we spent probably $400,000 on them answering questions about COVID, which could have been answered by an AI bot very easily.
Yep.
And so we're working on a project right now. We're in the demo phase with a couple different companies to roll out intelligent virtual agents to answer those
Nice.
questions. Other AI stuff in the healthcare aspect, a lot of the back end stuff is really good, but we're also doing the providers have the ambient AI when they're working with the patient to write in those patient notes. The benefit of that is, it saves them a lot of time, but it also gives a complete patient note. And then with that, you can then make sure that you're billing for all the right codes that you are, and your insurance billing becomes a lot cleaner. And
Hmm.
so I think that's the immediate ROI when you look at it. And then, there's other stuff in the back office to help with some of the insurance that we're looking at, but we haven't rolled it out yet. We're looking a little bit at, the term agentic AI. That's a big one out there right now. I think if you ask 20 people, you get, 20 to 22 different ideas of what that is. But, we're looking at, well, what type of agents could we use here to offset some of the workload that we have to, basically become a force multiplier and make our jobs a lot easier.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I do think that is kind of the future of it, of AI and places, is the agentic AI. And I think it's anybody's ball game right now. And it's going to be a lot of people's ball games, right? I mean, it's going to be a huge thing. So it's just fun and exciting to see what develops and what takes hold, and where that takes us. It's going to be a fascinating time.
Yeah, I think we'll see a lot of companies, and then we'll start to see a lot of consolidation.
Yep.
I mean, it's just, to me, the speed of AI right now. I think, well, we've been talking for 20 to 25 minutes. There's probably been 3 AI companies founded in the last 25 minutes. The speed of that
Yep.
is just, amazing. And a lot of them are doing some really cool things. But I think that, one of the aspects of when I think more adoption will come with AI is once we get some either legislation or some litigation. Because once you set those boundaries, because to me, boundaries, they allow you to move forward. So setting those boundaries, okay, this shows us the lane that we can be in, and let's go that way. I think that's what a lot of people are really waiting for before they dive in fully.
Yeah. No, I think there's a lot to be said for that, and it'll be interesting to see which way it goes, and if legislation can, you know, can help at all, if as and it tends to be too little, too late. So,
Mhm.
and with the speed that AI is going, um, it'll be interesting to see. The legislatures I think are going to be so slow in comparison that they'll always play catch up, because it's not their job to be ahead of anything.
Yep.
But I think in this case, AI is going to move so rapidly that it's going to be really hard to kind of put the genie back in the bottle after the fact with
It is,
legislation.
that's why I think litigation is really going to come first. And when
Yeah.
you start to see some of the IP laws coming up and being questioned,
Yeah.
some of the privacy things happening. If you're in healthcare, and if an AI is making a diagnosis and it's wrong, who's at fault?
Yep.
You think of your lawyer on the lawyer side, who can we sue? They're not going to sue the AI because the AI is not going to back it. It's going to be whoever's implemented it.
Yeah.
So I think, and once you start seeing that, it'll kind of like I said, give us those boundaries to work in, and it'll narrow the field, but it'll also just make it give us the ability to move forward.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Jason, this has been absolutely fascinating. I can't thank you enough for coming on. But before we go, can you tell everybody where they can find out more about you and more about Nevada Health District, or Southern Nevada Health District, rather?
Yeah. You can find me on LinkedIn. It's easy to find, and the Southern Nevada Health District, it's just snhd.info. If you're coming to Vegas and you're looking for a restaurant, you want to see if it's safe or not, we have an app, and we also have it on our website. You can see what their inspection scores were. You can see what their demerits were. You can kind of go on there, and if you're curious, you can go find like a celebrity chef who had their restaurant closed. Um,
Nice.
it takes a little searching, but you can find it.
All right, I know what I'm doing. That's gonna be great. Awesome, Jason. Thanks again. Until next time.
Matthew, thank you. It was a great opportunity. I really enjoyed it.
Pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the Cyber Business Podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.